Welcome to Small Grant Skills Workshop from Food for Life Get-Togethers, bringing people together through food. Whether you're totally new to applying for small grants of up to £1,000 or you've made a few applications, we hope that today's session and the resources that will follow will help you gain skills in applying and understanding how to improve your applications in the future. What will be covered in this session? We'll be explaining the process of applying for a grant, covering the do's and don'ts, and sharing skills that enhance your chances of being successful with small grant applications. Where to start? There are many reasons to apply for grant funding. You may require funding for equipment, resource development, volunteers' expenses, and much more. Before looking for funding, know your community. Start with identifying and understanding the needs of your organisation and the community it supports. Understand what skills and knowledge you can connect to. Think about what experience you have and knowledge, or who in the community you can connect to if you're thinking of trying something new. Know your organisation's aims and objectives. Knowing these things in detail will help guide you in what grant funding you spend your time applying for, also allowing you to show confidently that you can deliver on what you say you can. Approaches to funding, 2 paths. There are 2 approaches that you can take to funding, but for both you need to understand the needs of your community and the aims of your organisation first, and have some thoughts on what might support that. Path number 1. Design your project and then find a fund to fit. You may have a clear plan for the activity or project that you want to run, and you look for funding that suits this. In this case, you might look for funders who support projects in a particular location or that fund specific types of activity. Path number 2. Find a fund that connects with your work and shape a project around that. You might start looking for a funder with a specific focus, for example, connecting people or reducing food poverty. You might see what the criteria are and develop a project or activity that fits the need for your community and for the funder. This can happen when you're trying something new or innovative. It's important to make sure that you keep your organisation's aims and objectives as well as community needs in mind when looking for funding to make sure that you are not straying too far from this in an attempt to be a good fit for a funder. Finding a funder. There are many avenues to find funding grants online. Funders directly advertise on their own websites. There are large online databases. Many of these are paid subscription-based. Fund sharing networks you can search to find appropriate funds. And you can ask local people who you know or are working in a similar field. Know your funder. Before writing your application, take the time to find out about your funder. Look at who the funder is and understand what their priorities are and what they fund and what they want to hear from applicants. Before writing your application, take the time to find out about your funder. Look at who the funder is and understand what their priorities are, what they fund and what they want to hear from applicants. Firstly, look at whether your project fits all of the essential criteria and fund objectives. Using a highlighter can be useful to pull out the main information or make it into something visual if there's a lot of information there. Terms and conditions. Check the guidance of terms and conditions section to make sure you are happy and able to meet them. If you are unsure of any, you can ask the funder before investing your time in the application. Funders welcome questions from potential applicants. It shows that you're interested in getting the application right and making sure that you are a good fit for the funding, so don't be shy to ask. Within that section, it will have who we fund and what we fund and what we don't fund. Go through all the points, ticking those that you meet. Think about whether the time you will spend on the application and the amount you're applying for and the chances of being successful are worthwhile for your organisation's needs. Last but not least, note when the application deadline is and keep to it. It can be helpful to give yourself an earlier deadline. You don't want to put all that time and work in and then not be able to submit it. The most amazing application received after the deadline will usually not be considered. Here's a question for you. How might you summarise the information you are given and research about the funder to use in your application? Multiple funding applications. Organisations often have more than one application on the go at the same time. These might be for separate activities or projects, or for collective ones. There are benefits to applying for match funding, where two different funders or sources of income pay for different parts of the same activity. For example, you may apply to one funder for building some raised beds and another for filling these. It is best to try and avoid making multiple applications that cover the exact same cost though. This is because if you are successful with more than one application, you're likely to have to turn down the other funder's offer. It is also important to consider any extra workload that comes with managing multiple amounts of funding. Evaluation. Even with small grants, funders will often ask you to give examples of the impact and difference that you have made before in your application. Funders may ask how you're going to measure success and challenges. Evaluate what you do and share your learning. Funders are usually very interested in what the impact of the money they have given you has been, and so want to see an explanation of how you will capture this at the application stage. So ensure you give evaluation plenty of time and thought when writing your application. Thinking about evaluation from the start will help you to be well prepared for sharing evidence and data with the funder if you are asked for this later in the project, because you're gathering the information as you go along. If you're unsure about impact and evaluation questions, speak to the funder to find out what their expectations are. There are lots of resources for evaluation available online. Remember that making time for evaluation in your project can also help you provide evidence to support and strengthen future funding applications too. Here's another question. How would you evaluate your activities? What can you write in your application about your evaluation process? Here's a few easy things to get wrong. Try to write in plain language. Use short sentences and avoid acronyms and jargon. Remember that you're describing your work to someone who likely has never met you or seen what you do. So ensure that is detailed enough to bring your activities and impact to life. Stick to the word count guidance. Going over the number of words is unlikely to help and actually may mean your application is rejected. Provide the facts, numbers, or statistics requested, as well as emotive stories, quotes, images that highlight the positive change you can make. Getting across this head and heart information will strengthen your application. It can be useful to pick out keywords the grant funder uses to explain their aims and objectives. Reflecting keywords and phrases back at the funder helps them to understand how your intended activity and actions match with theirs. You know you're good, so make sure you shout about it. Avoid general statements and give clear examples to back up what you say, but keep those answers concise. You could try applying the CAR method to your answer. For example, think context, what happened, action, what we did do, and result, the outcome of our actions. Here's a poor example. We had a really good day as we got some children to eat peas. Everyone had fun. And here's a better example. We got 7 children who ate no vegetables to grow peas and then got them cooking their peas in different ways. 5 out of 7 children now eat peas and are eating more vegetables. Next year we'll grow potatoes and carrots as well. Remember, the funder may have read a lot of applications before they get to yours, so make reading your application as easy and interesting as possible to keep them engaged. Diversity and inclusion. Some funders openly make their process inclusive for everyone that may need extra support, offer alternative ways to apply, and ask people to get in contact, but many don't. If you're unsure of what support or options they provide, simply ask the question by phone or email. If this is something that will come up frequently for you or your organisation, you could have an email template with an explanation of your needs and what could support you to make an application. You could ask if they accept video applications. If not, they may allow you to send videos to support your application. Talking about who makes up your community and what their needs are shows that you are thinking about diversity and inclusion as part of your application. This often makes for a strong application as it shows you have thought about how to make sure your project or activity will meet the needs of and engage the community. Apart from strengthening your application, thinking about diversity and inclusion at this point means you will be able to embed this in your work and engage more successfully with your community. Often we find that applications can miss the fantastic work, approaches, and outcomes of their activities. This can be true for diversity and inclusion, particularly because diversity and inclusion done well can become a seamless and such an integral part of what you do. So remember to shout about it. Sustaining your activities. A lot of funders are keen to know what will happen when a grant funding has been spent. If the fund is not specifically for one-off activity, it is important that you show your activity is not a flash in the pan in the answers you give. Think about how you will be able to sustain changes. This could be by keeping activities running through working with a partner, using the small grant as evidence of a pilot to apply for a larger pot of funding, volunteers using equipment purchased that can be used over the long term, showing that you have delivered other projects and activities and that you're building on this demonstrates sustained activity to the funder. Local or national partnerships that you have or collaborative work that you undertake, networks you link with, or forums that you are on means that you're able to connect with others to share resources, skills and learning, and your work is more likely to be sustained. If you have these links, make sure you include them. Making it easier on yourself. Applying for funding doesn't need to be a job for just one person. If you have a team, it's great to get input from different people. You could train colleagues to be able to support you with grant applications. Maybe different people could become more confident in answering certain questions or sections. Getting a variety of perspectives is likely to strengthen your application. Often, a fresh pair of eyes will make it more easy to spot mistakes, as well as ensure that your answers flow and you've got across your intended message. They could double check that you have demonstrated that you meet the criteria and offer suggestions of what you could add to strengthen your application further. If you don't have someone internally who can support you with these final checks, think about who could help you by giving an honest perspective. This could be another organisation that you work with locally, or someone who has applied for or assessed grants before. You might feel nervous about showing your application to other people. Be confident this is only your draft. Their feedback at this stage could save you time and get you thinking differently to submit a stronger application. You could save yourself time by having a bank of frequently requested supporting documents to hand. Sometimes we find a good grant and we hope few organisations apply. It's quite natural to want less competition. However, sharing funding opportunities means that you're supporting like-minded people, building community resilience and partnerships that enhance and support yours and their activities. Now we will move on to a scenario activity. This can take up to 20 minutes of your own time, so please do pause the video and get a pen and paper and start writing ideas to help you when you're making your application. Imagine that you are a small local charity working with families and you want to run a growing get-together activity for the community. People will come to a community garden to plant and then share what's grown through a shared meal. Task. Thinking about what you would do before starting your application, make a list of the sort of information you would need to include for the following headings. Who are you? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And who will benefit and how? If you'd like to do this task, please do pause the video as I'll move on now to some example answers. Here are some of our suggestions of the types of information you would give for the following headings. Who are you? The type of organisation you are, your aims and objectives, links to the community and why you started, ethnicities of the group and age groups, how long you've been established, and if you're in a deprived area. What is it you're going to do? Specific day times, X many 1 hour sessions, a description of the activity, where, the location and what kind of venue. Is it going to change by your activity or develop an area? If an activity meets certain needs, it's vegetarian or healthy eating and there's cultural needs involved. How are you going to do this? Practicalities, resource, transport, getting people there, how many volunteers or staff, marketing and promotion, venue facilities, insurance checks, hiring, social distancing and safety, timing, how long the project's going to be, contingency plans, what if the weather isn't on your side, and how will people engage if it is online, how will you support? Who will benefit and how? Age range, numbers of people, details of target audience, age, ethnicity, what difficulties people have that you're going to help with. What are the long-term outcomes, next steps, education gained, social benefits? What's going to change for people? Talk about what you have learned from another project, and direct beneficiaries and indirect. Creating confidence in you, your organisation and group. creating confidence in you, your group or organisation. Funders often welcome different ways to connect with you or follow your progress with the project. You may not be confident with social media or have a website, but if you are able to include your website address and social media accounts for your group, for example, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, this can help the grant provider understand your organisation or project. Some may also check your visibility online as part of the process of filtering out fraudulent applicants. Thank you for joining us today for this small grant skills workshop. You can find on our website the presentation, guidance, resources and signposting for other small grants locally and nationally. You can spread this learning by sharing this video and building community capacity in applying for funds. Get-togethers have small grants available, so we'll apply on our website at fflgettogethers.org/support. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found it useful.